so collecting. So I think like I'm literally going to take us right back. So right back to when I was probably about 3 years old. So I think 3 years old roughly would have been my first memory of going to the cinema. So I was born in 1985, so I'm going to be 40 this year, and it was, I think, Oliver and Company, so the Disney film Oliver and Company. That was the film I saw. I remember walking into the cinema with my dad, and I just still remember now as, like, you know, a 3-year-old boy walking in and just seeing this massive screen up on the side. Obviously, you know, cinemas have big screens, but when you're 3 years old, it just seems like huge. And back then, obviously, TVs, back in the 80s, we were watching TVs that were, you know, smaller than laptop screens, you know, in modern day. So it was just amazing. I couldn't believe the size of the screen, and obviously when the picture hit, I still remember it, and you know, it was amazing. So that was the first sort of like big film sort of interaction I remember having as a young kid. The next one I think I remember is probably the one where I kind of like understood it a bit more. Where I was probably about 5 years old, I think, by the time of the release of this one, and that is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie from 1990. So yeah, once again, I still remember going into that cinema and sort of like seeing the massive screen again, again with my dad. And one thing that's always stood with me is I don't know whether I don't think they still do them like this, but so the sweet Smarties, right? So we took some Smarties in. I remember specifically we had them in a certain packaging, like there was a square box, which I don't think I've seen in years. So I'll put a picture up if I can find one. So if anyone remembers the box of square Smarties, like the big box of square Smarties, not those little tiny ones you get in a pack, you know, let me know in the comments, because that's a vivid memory for me. Vivid memory of going into that cinema watching, yeah, the big box of Smarties. And yeah, so I was about 5 years old then. And then, you know, we had a VHS player at home when I was little as well, which I've become sort of quite a master of as a young boy. So yeah, I just loved films from day one. And we had what I like a lot of people had, which is a lot of films that were taped off the TV. Obviously, sort of like my parents would have done that. So films would have come on the TV in the UK, and you can just set your VCR to record them, sort of overnight or while you're watching something else. So we had this whole drawer underneath the TV full of films where my mum's handwriting was on, just sort of saying, you know, what the film was called. But obviously I had no pictures to go by. I didn't know anything about the films, and there was no, you know, we had no internet, we had nothing like that. You couldn't just find out what the film title meant. So I had to just purely go by what the film title was and if it sounded interesting. And I remember, I've just noted a few down, like the ones in there. Obviously The Labyrinth was the first one, so I think I might have been shown that one, so then I got to know that that was a title that I wanted to watch a lot, and that's why I watched it so many times, and it's probably my favourite film, just because it's been there since I can remember. And then Ghostbusters. So obviously from that, as a young boy, you hear the word Ghostbusters, you just, without even knowing about the film, you can kind of put 2 and 2 and just assume that's going to be something you enjoy. So yeah, we had the Ghostbusters 1 and 2. We had the Karate Kid 1 and 2, I think it was, definitely the first one. Back to the Future, sort of 1 and 2 at some point on there. And I always remember the Back to the Future 1 and 2. I think my mum had put on the tape, like the Roman numerals for 2. And that's just something that always stood out to me as well. But yeah, so and then I think eventually we got 3 when that came out, and I was probably a bit older, and then we had the Roman numerals for 3, and I was thinking, oh, this is strange, like this is how it appeared on the titles, rather than just the number. That always stands out to me. And then there was another one in there which I think I have touched on in a previous video many times ago now, but yeah, that was Poltergeist 2. Now, as a young boy, I didn't even know what that word poltergeist says. Like, I can't spell it now as an adult, let alone back then when I was, like, young, you know. And I think one day I did put that one in when no one else was around, and that still haunts me now from, like, the old guy in that film. But yeah, so that was some of the first things I had. Then I had another one in there called Star Wars, and again, not knowing anything about these films before that as a very young boy, it just sounded like, I don't know, a war film. It could have been, I didn't know anything really about it. You were so young. But I remember the first time putting that in and just sitting there, like I probably didn't move more than a foot away from the screen, you know, just after putting the tape in. I just sat there the entire time and was blown away by it. That then led me on to obviously the Return, that you find out there's sequels, and then I went and bought the sequels from like a supermarket store, I think, at the time. Yes, I bought all the videos on there, so the original cuts. So that's sort of the next sort of VHS I remember having. Then we had like, I think a lot of people would have had back then, you had like down the local high street, you'd have a little kind of supermarket, or not supermarket, sorry, like a newsagents or something that would also do a few video rentals. So yeah, I used to rent a few tapes out there. I remember renting like DuckTales the movie back then. There was an Ewoks video, and that was like a cartoon animated thing. And because I was so into Star Wars then, I thought Ewoks, that was amazing. I remember renting those out. And then I remember vividly, like, there was two titles that kind of like started to spur things on even further. And that was, it must have been sort of like maybe the mid-90s, I think, based on the age of the film, like the second film. But I remember one of my, I think it's my godfather, basically, my godfather, he basically bought me, for one of my birthdays, I can't remember which one it was, two VHS tapes. I remember unwrapping them, and the first one was Masters of the Universe. So that's why I've got a special place in my heart for that film, because I remember just growing up with a cartoon of He-Man, you know, and then seeing that there was a real life version. Didn't know there was a real life version of it. Like, I thought, this man is, there's an actual He-Man, like he's in real life. This is going to be brilliant, and all the artwork on the box and everything looked amazing. And then the other one was Batman Returns. Now, I think Batman Returns, it was either 15 certificate back then on VHS or a 12. It was definitely one of the two. And I remember thinking, I'm nowhere near those ages at the time I got those. And I remember thinking, my parents aren't going to let me watch them. But they did. And, you know, I think that was amazing. I couldn't believe it. I was so excited to watch something that I wasn't meant to be watching. You know, I wasn't supposed to watch. I wasn't really allowed to. So those two films have always, you know, had a special place for me. And those are ones that I've always had and upgraded through VHS when I first got them as a young boy, you know, before I was even probably 10 years old, all the way up to DVD, Blu-ray, 4K, if they're available. So they're just two films that have always stood with me early on. So yeah, that was a big memory for that one. And then sort of I had a VHS collection after that, really. I had those two movies. Then I mean, I had a few other ones, cartoons in now and again from different people, you know, birthday presents and such. And then as I got a bit older, I started going out with mum and dad to like car boot sales around the UK on a Sunday. So it's quite a traditional thing for us at the time. We'd pop out, you know, Sunday morning, nice and early in the morning. You get there early, go look round, and I'd start just hunting for VHS tapes because that was, you know, DVD was a far off thing; it didn't exist. So VHS tapes, and I was exploring film. I was finding out all about film. I knew nothing about hardly any films. You couldn't. There was no IMDb, there was no internet, there was nothing. You were just literally on your own, and you went solely on the cover of what you saw on the floor. And these things were all about 50p a piece. Like, there was no value in the VHS at that time, really. So for, you know, my basic pocket money, I'd spend £1, £2, and come back with Aliens, The Abyss, you know, all these classics, The Terminator. And I remember coming back and just literally spending Sunday afternoon, as soon as I got back in from being at that boot sale, I'd be itching to get that VHS tape in the player. And yeah, I'd come back, and sure enough, Sunday afternoon, pop it in the player, sit there on my little sort of like square 4x3 tiny TV, and just watch whatever film I'd picked up that I purely based it on the artwork on the box, or like the sort of like, you know, pictures on the back of the box. And yeah, it was brilliant. That's how I started my exploration into film, really. It was like, yeah, VHS tapes at 50p a piece, all kind of squished into a small little 4x3 screen, and it was a great time. But yeah, fantastic. That was one of the things I enjoyed doing the most. Then, you know, skip a few years down the line, I get older. I actually went through school and stuff, and obviously friends had films and stuff. We traded films, and we watched films recommended by each other. But then eventually, when I finished school, I ended up getting a job in somewhere called Virgin Megastores. So Virgin Megastores, if for anyone who doesn't know, was basically like what HMV is today in the UK. It's like a video store, does vinyl, CDs, that sort of stuff. Yeah, so I was quite a young teen now. I don't think I was quite old enough to drive. I don't think I'd quite passed my test. I was probably 16, 17, somewhere around there. VHS were kind of the main thing in there, but they were, I think when I joined, they were on the cusp of becoming becoming obsolete. So they were selling VHS off cheap like anything, plus they got staff discount. So I was buying up VHS left, right and centre on that place, because they were just like, I was putting the stuff out. I had a pile for me and a pile for the shop, and I just bought so much. My collection exploded on VHS. Then these things called DVDs dropped in the store. And DVDs was the next big thing, and I remember picking up my first DVD player, and I upgraded my screen then because I was earning some money, so I spent hundreds of pounds on this equipment. And I think the first title I got with that was Tomorrow Never Dies. I think that was the first title I picked up on DVD because it came with the player or something. And yeah, I just remember watching the image, and as we all know, you know, from VHS, years of VHS, then you go to a DVD, you're amazed by the quality. It's just, yeah, fantastic upgrade. So yeah, VHS, then DVDs, but the DVDs were quite still expensive, so I was still kind of picking up VHS when I worked at this sort of video store, really, because you were paying like $2.99, $3.99 for like a brand new VHS sealed of a movie, compared to maybe £20, like £19.99, £20 for a DVD version of it. So yeah, for you know, to get as much quantity of the films through as I could, because that's what I was doing, just watching as many as I could, I was buying a VHS tape still. And then you started getting offers on DVD. So as it went on, you'd do like 5 for £30, you know, that sort of thing. So I'd end up spending the money that I made there basically straight back into the company just to like trade out. So I'd have a massive pile of stuff to buy at the end of each week. And yeah, it was great because I didn't have any commitments. I didn't own a car. There was, you know, I was trying to learn to drive, but I didn't really have any bills. I was still living at home. So my DVD collection just completely, you know, started growing faster and outgrew my VHS. So I ended up upgrading all my VHS. And the next thing you know, I've got, you know, I'm pretty much a teenager with a bedroom just with wall to wall, these little spinners, DVD spinners, all full of just various DVDs that I picked up. I mean, I was literally picking up pretty much one of every new release almost for quite a few months, maybe years while I worked there. Just because I could, like, it was something that I wanted to do. I wanted to explore them. I really enjoyed doing it. I got a discount on it. There was no reason why not. I became like, you know, the guy in that store. Is a big store as well. I became the guy in that store that all the other people that worked there would pretty much go to when they wanted advice or like recommendations or film knowledge, basically. Either for themselves or for customers. They'd sort of send them down to me because I was just the young kid that was into film. They were all into music. They were like my age now. So they were just there to work for the music and the vinyl and stuff. So yeah, so I was that guy. So yeah, no, that was a big part of my you know, DVD collecting days. And then again, we had, what else we had? So then internet shopping became a thing, and then you could sort of start ordering things online, stuff you couldn't get just readily available in stores. So you'd find that you could import films that were rare or uncut. So that started like, again, going back to, you know, when that boy of me was opening the Batman Returns tape and knowing that there was a certificate there that had 12 or 15 on it, and I definitely shouldn't be allowed to do it or see it. There was something similar to that in me when I, you know, you see something that's uncut, is something that's been banned previously, and you think, oh, this is something we shouldn't be seeing, or we can't see, we never used to be able to see. So that kind of spurred me on to try and investigate those, which started my love probably of like video nasty stuff and you know, the uncut movies and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, that was another little avenue I went down. Ordering stuff online. Then yeah, so yeah, as a teenager, I had wall-to-wall DVDs everywhere. I remember my mates coming around, and it was just like Blockbuster. It was like my teenager bedroom was like Blockbuster. There was movies on every single wall, and I'm not exaggerating. Then we had obviously Love Film. So Love Film was a postal service. You could rent DVDs. So after I finished, I think I must have finished working at the sort of like movie store at a certain point, and you know, so I wasn't getting discount on the stuff anymore. And I thought, well, actually, my physical space is so full now, I might as well just start renting films so I can still see them, but I don't have to store them anywhere. If I really like them, I can then just buy them later on and kind of like sort of curate a collection a bit more. But yeah, so I did Love Film for ages, which I know a lot of us did. You know, another good way of getting lots of films in to watch. Then a few years more down the line, I got to the point where I wanted to buy a house, you know, move out of home and buy a house. And I was that much older now, so the films kind of like had slowed down a bit in terms of purchasing. And to physically move all those things, I made the kind of big decision to just basically take almost all of them out of the boxes and put them in little paper disc sleeves, which is what I did. And then I've stored those in little plastic drawers. I literally binned all the artwork, I binned all the boxes, because I just couldn't physically move all the amount of titles I had from my kind of like home I grew up in to the house that I bought today. I thought it was just so much easier to shrink it all down. So I did all that. Some regrets in doing that, but in other ways, to be fair, it saved a lot of time and hassle doing it just further down the line, and you know, extra trips backwards and forwards with boxes and crates of stuff. So it wasn't the end of the world. So yeah, so that's kind of how my DVD collection kind of went from a massive collection down to, just the discs, or like even some of the discs ended up going, I think, after a while. Yeah, so that was DVDs. Then obviously once you got a house, you kind of got other expenses. You're now kind of like, you know, you're not sure what your money's going to be like coming in when you've got your job, and what your bill is going to be like when you first move in. So the collection kind of died a death basically. I had a few Blu-rays that I'd kind of like picked up along the way of my favourites, upgraded my DVDs of certain favourite movies, you know, and so I had a small collection of Blu-rays. That was, yeah, nothing to write home about really. I suppose bigger than most average people that collect. Yeah, got a few more here and there for birthdays and things, mostly trying to then just upgrade to Blu-ray, a lot of the favourite DVDs I had. And then, yeah, skip along a few more years, or a handful more years, and COVID comes along. So, yeah, COVID obviously quite recent in some respects. COVID came along, and I was, you know, stuck at home basically, like a lot of us. And I ended up watching a lot more YouTube, and I stumbled across, I think one of the first channels I remember stumbling across was, I think, John Clancy at Movie Collector. And he was just talking about his love of film and like cinema and stuff like that, and he kept recommending other channels, or talking about other channels which I wasn't aware of. I think one main one that stood out to me was John Mondo Chelovic. So yeah, he was another sort of like name that came up quite regular. So I ended up checking out his channel. Then I saw what John had with all the shelves behind him, and I thought, wow, this is amazing. This is what I used to have as a teenage boy. This is sort of what I had at the time to some extent, but only like a very small shelf area at the time. And I could just listen to John talk about his passion for films for, you know, hours, and I did, and I still do. And yeah, and then you know, as what happens, you then hear John talk about someone else with another channel. I think of Leon Talks Film, and then you had Andy from Forgotten World of Movies, and then you start getting into the kind of, you realise there's a whole community of people out there that are really into film, and that are, you know, the same as you. So with that much time on my hands, and not having, you know, much to do in the COVID times, I was watching all these videos, getting to know all these faces and all these voices of the people that are around the country and around the world that are really into movies, and it really reignited my passion for it, to the extent where I was considering doing a YouTube channel myself. And I think, I'm sure I must have told him before, but it was something that John and Andy were talking about on a stream somewhere. And I think something along the lines of, Andy said, you know, he was unsure about starting, and basically what he did was he just film it. He said, just film it. You don't have to put it up. You know, if you film it and you don't feel right with it, don't put it up. You know, but if you film it, you put it, and you feel right, put it up. See how it goes, and that's kind of what I did. So there's some top advice there for Andy, or for anyone from Andy that you know, anyone thinking they're sitting there watching this maybe is thinking, oh, maybe I could start a channel. Just try it, just film it, see what happens. Like I say, you don't have to put it up. If you think it's not going to work out, or you get a bit, you know, cold feet at the end, don't publish it. But you probably find that you might, and if you do, you'll probably be welcomed into the community, and you'll be part of what we have here. So yeah, so that was how I got into the YouTube and doing my own channel. And then I got really lucky, because then John sort of like noticed me. I think I was commenting on his videos, and he found out that I was doing a channel. I think I might have asked him for some advice. He gave me a shout out, and then all of a sudden I've got all these subscribers jumping on, just because John sort of like, you know, recommended me. So that was really nice of him, and yeah, so I appreciate that. You know what a shout out can do, as a lot of sort of starting channels, you know, would tell you. So yeah, that was kind of how I got going. Then watching the other guys still, but then kind of doing a little bit myself. You get to know more people in the community, and that's how that started. Then you go on to like, so during COVID, the other thing I ended up doing was I ended up picking up a projector. So I'd never had a projector before, and I just had, I don't know, just sort of stumbled across them. You know, you're browsing online, and then you end up down a rabbit hole, and then all of a sudden you're looking at stuff and you think, there's nothing else to do. My money's still coming in to some extent, but I'm not really spending anything, can't go anywhere. So I ended up putting down a little bit of money on this sort of cheap Chinese projector, on the hope that, I'd watched so many videos and recommendations, in the hope that maybe it would be okay. And yeah, ordered it, and it was amazing. I thought, just couldn't believe I could have like 100-inch plus image of Star Wars up on my wall in the house at home, and watch a movie like that. So yeah, that was a big turning point, because once I had that, then I was like, right, we're going to start watching. I'm going to start watching movies on this projector. It's going to be like the cinema. You know, you can't go to the cinema in lockdown. So I did all that. Then I ended up like stripping out some of the stuff in my garage and like putting a projector up there on sort of like a bracket system, which I've shown before on the channel. Putting an old surround system in there, and making like a little cinema, and that was great. And then I realised like some of the DVDs I was putting through it, just because it's getting pushed to such a large image, the DVD resolution isn't quite there. It's like, it looks okay, but Blu-ray is just like so much better for blowing the images up that big. So that's when I really honed in on Blu-ray, started upgrading everything to Blu-ray, collecting more Blu-ray, obviously getting recommendations from channels and stuff at this point, and watching all the Blue Tubers and stuff. So yeah, so that's when Blu-ray just really took off for me. So yeah, that's where we're at from that. Yeah, just went crazy from there. So that is how I'm kind of in the way I'm in now with the collection I've got now. So I think looking back, from the very start of my kind of movie journey, from a young boy going to that cinema screen of Oliver and Company, and to now, all these sort of things have had an effect on how I collect, my tastes in movies and all sorts of things. I think my tastes of practical effects and things that have come from watching things like Masters of the Universe and having that memory and that nostalgia there, because I use so many practical effects in that film. Bit of computer animated stuff as well, but mostly it's practical. Also, obviously it's a bit of a sci-fi movie from the 80s, so I love 80s movies, I love sci-fi movies. You got Batman Returns, which is like, goes quite dark, and all my VHS watches from the boot sales. I was picking up random horror movies, with random covers on. So my love of horror was from there, watching Aliens and stuff like that, and Alien. So again, all these horror things were coming through, so that's where my kind of love of horror stuck from. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking, and then it's all stuff that shaped how I've collected, what my tastes are in films today. So my collection now, I guess I'll do a cutaway now. I've been chatting probably for way too long, so 25 minutes by the looks of that. I'll do a cutaway. I'll just walk you through like how I've kind of got the setup done, because I've done some changes in the collection at the minute. So yeah, we'll pause the video, and I'll show you what I've got. So yeah, we're over here. We've got a bit of anime set up in the corner here, followed by a load of basically family films, kids films essentially, all the way down the side here. Some Disney ones in a box just there. Yep, that's all those. And then got my Labyrinth poster at the top there, the frame. And then here, we've seen this probably a few times, but I've rearranged all this stuff a little bit. All my kind of films I like to watch quite regular, like all the ones that I enjoy. So that's all my, popcorn movies, as I like to think of them. So loads of stuff I can rewatch, goes all the way down to the bottom there. A few box sets and special things on the side here. So you've got the Godzilla set, and then these imprint boxes, which are amazing. Then I've got this little screen thing here, which I quite like. You can chop and change that around with all the letters in there. And then here underneath, I've put all my films to watch. So this is basically my watch pile. So all these things in here, I've put them all together regardless of genre or anything like that, or collection. All my films that are in my watch pile. And then I've got these two little white crates around here at the minute, which I'm basically using for any pickups I get in the month. So when I do my pickup videos at the end of the month, basically this one here, I'm putting anything that comes in if I haven't seen it. Once I've seen it, I'll put it in that one so I don't forget to show it on a video. So that's how I'm organised that. And then on the horror wall over the other side here, I've got all the titles along the very, very top row here. They're all the horror ones that I've still got to watch on my watch pile of horror. Then I've basically put a few arrows together there in the watch pile. Then I've reordered my horror collection into horror by year. So starting with the Monsters collection at the very end here, so just up here. Going all across here, these are basically all pre-1970 movies in this little small section here. Then from here all the way along is any 1970s type movies in alphabetical order, and then anywhere from here is 1980s movies all the way along here, and again all the way along here, all the way along here. So my love of the 80s, you can see, has been you know, showing there. And then it got a few more 80s there. And then when this one's here, just laying sideways on, roughly there, I think it is, oh no, sorry, Anaconda. So just before. That's when you get to the 90s movies. It's all my 90s horror, 90s horror, 90s horror. A couple of Scooby-Doo figures I picked up recently at a charity shop. Haven't shown them yet on a video. They're pretty cool. And then we go down to some, I think it's 2000s horror. So yeah, my 2000s horror. 2000s horror all the way through. And 2000s horror. And then you get to 2010s. So you got 2010s there. And going down 2010s. And then you go into, I think it's the 2020s from Abigail. So these are the sort of like the latest horror movies from the current decade. And then below that, I've just got a few shelves of stuff that I want to rewatch. So this is my rewatch pile. So yeah, all films I've seen before, but just stuff I want to rewatch basically. That it's been too long, can't remember much about them. So yeah, and then a little bit down the bottom there as well on the shelf. A lot of Star Trek, so still I'm going through those at the moment. But yeah, that's kind of how I got things set up.